तभी तो अब आ रहा है. Hello and welcome to the show. Welcome to the conversation. Today we are discussing the impact of regional parties in the ongoing general elections. And our focus of today's conversation is going to be in the eastern state of Bihar. We've always seen Bihar throw up a number of political leaders who played a major role when it comes to government formation, especially when there is no clear mandate, as we've been seeing in the past few elections. So, what is going to be the role of these regional parties, especially the parties in Bihar, in government formation? So, of course, we'll come to that. What we'll do right now is that we'll show you that story later, but let's discuss something more interesting that's happening in this election, and that's of course been our politicians. In during the heat of the elections, we've seen them attend a number of rallies, but exactly what happens in these rallies and do they tend to often repeat themselves? We're going to talk about that, and I have with me Dr. Oman, renowned socialist and of course an author who's joining us. Sir, we'll start with this topic first about our politicians and how we've seen a lot of them repeat the same thing over and over again. Are we seeing it a lot in this election, especially?
I don't think so. Maybe in this election there is a large number of people in the field and new parties have come into being, and therefore there is a tendency to believe that they are repeating themselves more often than it used to be in earlier times. But I think it's Aristotle who once said, all good things needs to be repeated. But the problem here is whether what they are repeating is good or bad. Now, you think of any political party, it has a certain set of basic ideas, and that is what they want to tell people all over. And the only way to get out of this repetitive syndrome is to dovetail their communication with specific reference to certain areas. For example, you mentioned Bihar earlier. Bihar has certain specific problems, and the sitting chief minister has been asking for enlisting Bihar as a state with certain special privileges. Now, why? Because there are certain specific difficulties, deficiencies, developmental deficiencies, and therefore that needs to be taken care of. And within Bihar, there are different regions, like in any other states. And those regions also will have their own specificities and deficiencies. So if a politician is going to address the people based on those specificities, then they don't have to repeat, although the central point remains. But what is happening or what is likely to happen is that one doesn't really study the problems of a particular constituency or region, as the case may be, but have a certain general idea and then shoot off this wherever they go.
So we'll continue
Yes.
the conversation. We'll just have a look at a small story that we put together
Sure.
of how it appears that our politicians seem to be running out of ideas and saying the same speeches over and over again. Here, take a look. Elections in India have always been about color and emotions. Our politicians coin fiery phrases and use provocative terms to sway the public mood in their favor. But is that slowly becoming a thing of the past? If one were to hear our politicians giving speeches during these general elections, it appears they're speaking on radio, giving the same message everywhere.
भ्रष्टाचार का इसका विकराल रूप इस दशक में जो देखा है देश ने कभी नहीं.
Our government has done more to combat corruption than any other government. The single biggest step, transformatory step that we took, called the right to information.
It is famously believed that the great socialist leader Ram Manohar Lohia never repeated his speech. The eloquence of Jawaharlal Nehru made him a darling of the crowds for many decades. Former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee could keep the crowd on its feet for hours with his poetry and sense of humor. So, what exactly seems to be the problem with today's leaders? Is it that we see them too often on TV? Or have they just lost the creative streak that made the profession of politics attract people from all walks of life? Well, you can also log on to our website indiapostlive.com and post your comments, reactions to what you think, whether our politicians are actually, losing their inventive streak. You can also hashtag India Post Live to your tweets, and if you want to join in the conversation, just log on to our site and we'll put you on air. Coming back to our topic, we also have Ashok Wankhede joining us, senior journalist. Sir, the issue that we're discussing is that, especially in this election, are we hearing the same things over and over again from our leaders?
Yeah, there's a reason to it. Sanjeev, what I personally feel, the orators are born, the leaders are born. When you thrust leadership on somebody, for whatever reason it may be, you get such type of results. You were talking of Atal Bihari Vajpayee. I still remember in Jaipur when the National Executive Committee meeting was there. It was winter, and when a Jaipuri Razai was presented to Atal Bihari ji, so he opened a speech with a chaupai of Ramayana, where it says Ram Rasajai. He said, "No, I realized it was not Ram Rasajai, it was Ram Razai." And the Razai is here. So he had a knack to turn the event into a good speech. Now speeches are written. There is a research team who write a speech. How can you think? I still remember Chandrasekhar when he became a prime minister and he was to address the nation. So somebody said, "Sir, yeah, this is the copy of the speech." He said, "What copy?" Chandrasekhar with a copy. Just can't imagine. This was just spontaneous. So that thing is lacking. That is what with Rahul Gandhi. That is what with Narendra Modi. That is what you find with Kejriwal.
Okay, so the point is that our leaders need to be more spontaneous, and perhaps a lot of research and written speeches are given to them.
They cannot depend on research. They will have to read themselves. They should know what is the problem of the people. If you know the pulses of the people, you are bound to react. Okay. But if somebody tells you that this is the problem of Madhya Pradesh, you are going to address in Madhya Pradesh, depending on the research what you have, you make a lot of mistakes. So when mistakes are made, what Modi said in Bihar about Nalanda and other things.
Alexander.
Why? Well, because I think Modi never read history in that sense. He was totally dependent on the research team.
So we'll come to the details. We have John Samuels joining us from Trivandrum. Hi, John.
Hi.
So tell us, what do you think about our leaders, and do you think they seem to be running out of ideas?
I think there are two things in this election. As we say that, if you really look at what people say and others are, one is it's a post-ideological kind of thing, because nobody is giving a normative framework, a dream. BJP's campaign is by and large a negative campaign, focusing on what has not been done. And if you really look at other campaigns, that's also when you say what is called development, it is defined in a very narrow way. So this is an election which lacks depth in terms of a dream. It lacks depth in terms of an ideological positioning. It started by AAP, it's been continued by Congress, and the whole Rahul Gandhi advertisement, it lacks any substantive worldview. We say that, it is, this is a series of statements with thousands of hoardings. And this is also the first election where the entire election campaign...
I'll cut you there. I'd like to bring in Dr. Oman on that point. John is making a point that, there is a lack of depth. Do you agree with that, sir?
Not really, but before I respond to John, let me also reflect on what Mr. Vankadaya said. You know, the difference between those times and these times, when you think of a Jawaharlal Nehru, after all, he's a man who authored fantastic works like Glimpses of World History, The Discovery of India. Let us not think in terms of comparing him with present-day politicians.
We can at least compare Modi
No,
with
no, no.
Advani, president, both of
Yeah,
them
yeah.
leader. Advani is well read.
Yeah.
There are thousands of people. Even I tell you, forget about Advani. Advani may be a senior man. But what about Parekar? You go to you talk of Parekar, the Goa chief minister, you discuss with him. You don't need a research team.
No, let me complete what I was trying to say. That's one aspect. Then, that time, whether it is Atal Bihari Vajpayee or Jawaharlal Nehru, when they made a speech, that was by and large reported in what is called print media. So, print media will have only one story, what he spoke in Ahmedabad and what he spoke in Gwalior. They will sum up. But what happens today, because of your media, I mean electronic media, it happens instantly. And if a person is addressing, let's say, 100 sets of people all over the country within a span of 10 days, nobody on earth, the biggest genius on earth, can't but repeat. But
Okay.
before
I have a
you
point,
came,
small point.
please do. Before you came, we just started, and I said they can think in terms of dovetailing their conversation, their talks, in terms of the local problems.
Exactly.
And for that, you need enormous amount of work.
Exactly.
And
Now,
that's
that's
what
what I'm
happens.
saying.
Yes.
When I attended a Rath Yatra of Advani ji, he started from Somnath. And after 15 kilometers, he used to address a rally. By and large, the speeches were the same. Pramod Mahajan and they were addressing the same speeches. The gist was the same. But they used to open it with something local, end it with something local.
Yes.
Now that local feedback, what you get, you read 10 newspapers. Advani used to read himself 10 newspapers, local newspapers. What is tomorrow I am going to address in Baroda? What should I open with? And at least when you are a man of that stature, representing the India as a prime minister, you are a prime minister candidate, you need to know about India.
Absolutely.
You cannot say, no, about Rahul Gandhi also I say, he said, I am understanding India, I am still going to farmers, I am still going to coolies, I am trying to understand. Now, if you are trying to understand the problems of India, if you tomorrow become a prime minister, you still will be in that understanding mode. So what exactly the nation is going to expect from you?
See,
Okay, so I'd like to bring in John on this point. John, are you there?
Yes.
So, does that answer a bit of the query that you had? The reason why what Dr. Uman said is that too many rallies are happening, which is why perhaps that lack of depth comes. But if you were to choose between our current top leaders, who would you say is the one who strikes out as being most innovative amongst them?
No, it's very difficult to, look at it. If you look at all the communicative functions, I have very closely watched 4 or 5 leaders. For instance, Rahul Gandhi was here the last 2 days, and he had 3 versions of the speech. Basically, the first paragraph would be local, somebody has given the local input. And these 3 versions he has done in around 4 or 5 meetings. Now, the problem about the lack of depth is not about the repetition. It's because the entire speech writing, the entire ad campaign, it's outsourced to people who are alienated from the organic political process. And this was very clear. It's not only the speech. Look at the multi-million Congress campaign. And now look at, Modi. Modi is also, you do not see, though Hindutva is the subtext, it's all about the Gujarat development. This whole district called development is not as an ideology. Development in a very narrow sense. In the entire Kerala, there is hardly any discussion about the future. Everybody, even including Shashi Tharoor, is giving speech about whether he give a bridge or a bus stand or this and that, about MP land. So there is a whole lack of depth about the future of the country.
Okay.
Where do you want to take the country?
Okay.
Beyond that is the kind of thing. You do the recycling of the same speeches written by somebody who are organically or who are alienated from organic politics. And it's so evident among all of them.
Okay,
And
point.
among the difference is among Modi ji, he has rehearsed the speech so many times. It's so evident in terms of the pitching he does, the words he does it. He has been trained thoroughly, which is absent in the case of Rahul Gandhi. He has
Okay.
not done, real good rehearsal.
Okay, John, point taken. I'd like to come to Dr. Oman. He mentioned that, most of the advertising campaigns are now outsourced, which is perhaps, where we see that the lack of personalization. How important is that point that John is trying to make?
That's a very interesting point. But again, you see, why is it that we don't have enough number of people within that pool to be outsourced who are competent, who have done their research? I mean, after all, 1 out of every 6 human beings in the world is an Indian. We are 1/6 of the total population of the world. Now, why can't we have such people who are good enough to be outsourced? We don't have that. In other words, the whole idea of communication as we understand it today is a very new notion. It is not yet internalized, institutionalized. We are only scratching here and there. So, while agreeing with him, I don't think, that should be taken very seriously. But the other point he made, the whole notion of development, whether it is the Kerala model, Maharashtrian model, or Gujarat model, all these are being talked about. It's a very shallow understanding. Do any one of them seriously talk about ecology, environment? Even in Kerala, although recently Kerala got some prize, United Nations prize for that Kumaragam thing, etc. When you look at the picture as a whole, what's happening? Basic things are not available. And therefore, unless we have a comprehensive view of development, which is very much related to political visions, we cannot really think in terms of meaningful conversation. So everybody wants to outdo the other in terms of that little space. And that's why repetition becomes inevitable. We can't escape it.
Now, the problem, Sanjeev, here, we are a vast country. We don't have a fixed formula where you can put out one place and say this is development. When you talk of development, what is Gujarat model may be successful in Gujarat, it may be utter failure in Bihar, and the Bihar model will fail in Kerala. We have different models, different states, but comprehensive study if you do, there are certain things like infrastructure development, what you talk of environmental issues, or education policy as a whole, or a foreign policy, or the economical policies as a whole. If you study, you really can do good for the country. But the problem is that when we speak, we try to sail the moon to the people. Now, for example, today the manifesto was released of Bharatiya Janata Party. So many things, let us not go into that, because let them come to power and see. But I am talking about the manifesto of Narendra Modi in 2011, which he has given. Now, he's there in power for last 2 years in Gujarat. Now, the total expenditure of that manifesto, if you go by, that becomes 14,000 lakh crore. If that is the amount, the revenue generated by the state is so short. So by 2017, every Gujarati will have a burden of 53,100 rupees loan per head. Now people are happy, clap. I said we need to educate the people also. If somebody says I will give you free water or free electricity, nothing comes free, Sanjeev. Somebody has to pay for it.
Of course.
So from where you are going to pay? Somebody is going to give you electricity free of cost? Somebody going to give you water free of cost? They should be saying we will give you water at a reasonable cost. But this free of cost, giving free loan to the farmers. Now there are farmers in Maharashtra, they can return the loan, but they wait for the elections to come.
No.
So there will be a loan waiver scheme and we will waive the loan. So these are the popularistic measure when the politicians they take. They only announces these measures on a target for a vote bank on a particular day, 16th May they are going to have a result. So for that they are doing the entire exercise. Nobody is bothered after 16th, whoever comes to power, whether it is Congress, whether it is BJP or a third front, will be they able to implement their manifesto what they really promise?
Let me just partly respond to Mr. Wankade. You are absolutely right that the regional ecological variations in this vast country called India is so much that one cannot really talk about development in the singular. Agrees. But having said this, let us narrow it down to 2 or 3 basic things, what is called the Human Development Index.
That's what I said.
Yeah,
Education,
yeah.
environment,
Now,
these are these things which every
yes.
state.
Now, there are 2 or 3 things which are very basic. One is the health issue. The other is the education issue. And
Infrastructure.
yes. Now, when we compare, if we compare only based on those, comparability increases, but all available evidence, researched evidence, show that the standing of Gujarat as a state in the developmental scale in terms of infant mortality, in terms
Education
of
dropouts.
the children going to education, in terms of the dropouts, etc., it is very, very low. So, if you are looking at development from the other end, namely that the industrialists have been well protected by providing land at cheaper rate, and therefore the case of famous Nano, you all know. The case of famous
It's
Nano.
not that, sir.
Yeah.
It's not only land at cheaper rate. They give a land at cheaper rate. Even that amount is being loaned by the government at no interest.
So my point is, therefore, when you talk about development, what lens you are wearing? If you are wearing the lens of Aam Aadmi, ordinary people, poor people, those who are below poverty line, you get one picture. But if you are putting on the lens of the industrialists, be it Tata, Birla, whosoever it is, you get another
In a
angle.
nutshell, GDP or a stock market index should not be a barometer for the development.
Okay. I'll bring in John into the conversation again. John, do you agree with the experts that the moon is promised to our electorate, and at the end of the day they get nothing?
Yeah, this is a problem in the Indian election. The manifestos, if you really look at the news coverage of the manifestos and the way manifestos are being stressed, it's very less. And BJP has not even been able to develop a consensus. This is partly the problem of new contradiction in Indian politics, where there is definitely an entrenched relationship between the political elites and economic elites of this country, where the corporate funding has been almost institutionalized. So they need to really make those people happy. At the same time, have a sort of a UPA 2 model, BJP also doing a kind of social protection measures. But none of them have been able to discuss the real issues about inequality, the real issues about water shortage, and none of them has been able to do how they are going to do it. So what happened is you have cut and paste manifestos come after year, and the media itself becomes cynical about reporting to it, and these manifestos themselves are being cooked up by a small group of people without necessarily any knowledge of those party structures downstairs, on the grassroots. So in a sense, again the same problem. What I'm saying is there is a disjuncture between grassroots political process and mass politics and the politics of knowledge and communication. And this disjuncture is partly because of the negotiating structures, both media and corporate world are actually, their interests are devoid, their interests are quite alienated from the organic political process in this country.
Okay.
So this disjuncture in communication is a major problem, because you look at it, whether it's Congress or BJP, it's an English-speaking, urbanized elite group. This is very different from who create a manifesto, and then it gets 1 or 2 days of newspaper reports, then it disappears from the public eye.
Okay, John.
Nobody talks about how. They talk about promises which are completely alienated from the people, and they also talk promises. I looked at the Congress manifesto in a very patronizing way to the poor of this country.
Okay, got your point. I'd like to come to Venkatesa, to you. Dentsu APCO, the point that he's trying to make is that, you know, when we use these agencies, so somewhere down the line that, you know, that rural connect goes.
Yeah, definitely. Because of agencies, they have their own research system. Agencies, they are selling political parties like a brand. Brand development, brand placement. For them, it's not a political issue. It's not an election. It's not a bonding with the people. For them, Congress is a brand, or a BJP is a brand, or a Samajwadi Party is a brand. So they sell it as a brand. When you sell it as a brand, you sell the dreams. Your main target is to get the sale. Your target is not whether your shirts is washed properly or the particular shampoo really helps you out. Their main, they have to liquidate their product fast moving things like. So similarly, they are trying to sell the political dreams also in the same way. Now what John was talking, he says there is no feedback. But both the political parties, prominent political parties of this nation, the Congress or the BJP, Congress, the Yuvraj of Congress was touring everywhere, including coolies, to get the feedback. Similarly, today Murli Manohar Joshi said 11 lakh people responded to their website and they gave the suggestions. And out of that suggestion, they came out with the agenda. That manifesto. What manifesto says? You see their 2009 manifesto, you see the 2011 Gujarat manifesto, there's a combination of that.
Cut paste.
With cut paste. With, you have Guy, you have Ganga, cow, Ganga, Common Civil Code, 370, Ram Mandir. Now these are the manifesto on page 41. The entire RSS agenda is on page 41 of the manifesto. Now my only problem is that before, when the election campaign started, Modi said, we don't need temples, we need toilets. That is more important. I asked Rajnath in one of the programs, I said, what is your stand on Ram Mandir, the temple issue? He shot back sharply. This is not the work of the government to build a temple. Government is here to govern. Now, where all those answers have gone when the manifesto comes? So, manifesto is not only ruled by the feedback or a particular four Johnnies coming together, it's also the remote control which is controlling the party. For some, it's a corporate world. For some, it is sung. Might be for some, it's interested few Johnnies who are very attached to the high command. They decide what is to be given to the people.
Okay, sir. I'd just like to bring in John. John, thanks so much for coming on the show, and we hope you got some answers to your queries, and we look forward to having you more on our conversation. Thanks so much for joining us, John.
Thank you very much.
Well, you can also join into our conversation. You can log on to our website, indiapostlive.com, and send your comments and give us feedback about what you think about this conversation. You can also hashtag IndiaPostLive to your tweets, and we'll get back to you. So whenever you feel that there's something you want to add to our conversation, please feel free, log into our site, and we'll take you on. We don't have much time. I'd like to come to Dr. Oman. Sir, the point that sir is making is ultimately you come back to the same issues. But looking from a politician's point of view, do they really have the time to get into local issues, or just go on a pan-India basis?
See, there are two things. I said in the beginning, ultimately each of the political formations have their basic ideas. He mentioned it vis-a-vis BJP. You can get a similar list vis-a-vis the Congress. So the basic ideas are the same. Over a period of time, what has happened? Now, as far as the Congress is concerned, in the last 10 years, they can say, and one must accept the fact, a large number of, or quite a few, very socially, economically sensitive legislations have been passed. But there is a huge gap between the passing of the legislations and their implementation. Our bane is that.
You agree with
Yeah,
that?
definitely agree. I never, see, for that matter, I say no government. Let the Muslim political party or any fanatical party come to the power in India. They will definitely do something for the development of the country. So they pass the legislation and they feel that after passing an act or given a right to the people, their job is over. So who will implement it? That's a problem. Right to education, you don't have infrastructure. Right to food, you don't have money. You are giving right to health. Where are hospitals? You are saying we are giving to right to home. Where is money?
Okay, sir, we're running short of
I'm
time.
just running
yeah.
one half a sentence.
Yes.
The huge gap between the promise through the legislations and regulations and the implementation, the practice, that is to be dealt with.
So I'll come back to the original question about the one speech wonder thing. Do you think that this is something that can change very quickly between the
I don't think it will change unless, of course, as I said right in the beginning, localization takes place.
Okay.
Localization.
Okay. So your take.
I will just give a small example. If it's a good classical movie, it releases and it lasts for 25 weeks, we call it Silver Jubilee. A quickie, it being released at 100 theatres, that lasts for only 1 week. That also makes money. Both the films make money, but you have to see which is the classical one.
Okay.
So this also, by immediately repeating again and again, they may get some vote. We don't know the youth voters what they are going to look at. But overall, had Modi not started that early, it might have not been that much repetition.
Okay. Okay, sir. On that note.
But repetition is a must, because if you simply say once, even the audience forget it.
Okay.
Repetition doesn't mean repeating every day.
That's right.
Okay.
That is also one point.
Okay.
There has to be some limitation to the repetition.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're really running short of time. So there you heard from our experts that maybe perhaps, if the election campaign had started a bit late, then we might not have seen so many repetitions happening. But thank you so much, Mr. Wankhede sir and Dr. Oommen for joining us. You can also log on to our website, India Post Live, and post your comments and give us feedback on what you think about this conversation. You can also hashtag India Post Live on Twitter and send us your information, comments, and what you feel about how the show's gone about, and we'll keep bringing you these conversations over the day. But once again, thank you, our guests, for joining us, and keep watching India Post Live for the latest updates, and conversations will continue on indiapostlive.com.